Hello, hello, hello. What's up, everybody? Again, John the Morgile back for part two of the supercalifragilisticexpialidocious Super Blood Wolf Moon Lunar Eclipse event, January 2019. Welcome, welcome. Thanks, everyone, for joining yet again for, well, my third live stream today. Well, technically my first live stream today because it is technically the 21st of January. But yeah, we did the Glowbusters earlier. I was going to eat dinner when I got off the Glowbusters show, and I realized that we hadn't even thawed out the meat. So ended up eating a late dinner, which I just got done with, hence the mid break during the lunar eclipse. But I made it back in time for the totality, it appears. And this stream is not going to be as long as the first one, but just wanted to report live from sunny Florida, Central Florida, and this is again looking up at the supermoon, the supercalifragilistic wolf blood moon lunar eclipse, and it looks like the top of the moon is still peeking out of the into the light, which is kind of weird because it's supposed to be in its absolute maximum totality right now. Um, Really quickly, before I go any further, I did just want to give a couple of thanks because this live stream here would not be possible were it not for Maria and Chris. So between the two of them, Maria and Chris sent a total to Nick's going to the labor hall tomorrow and vying for same day work, same day pay. So at any rate, thanks so much to Maria and Chris. And again, I this channel is viewer supported, so if you would like to contribute to the channel effort and help me to focus my time on doing videos as opposed to working like an Israeli slave for minimum wage, you can do one-time contribution to PayPal at www.paypal.me/themorgile, or a recurring monthly contribution through Patreon for as little as $1 per month at www.patreon.com/themorgile. Also, I wanted to give a big thanks and shout out to Evan Boymel. I didn't notice it during the last live stream just a few minutes ago, but he sent in a super chat for $99.99. His question was, what if the blood moon is the power that will make all my desires come true? And sorry, Evan, I hate to burst your bubble. That's probably not the case, but who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I have been known to be wrong in the past, but thank you so much for the super chat. Also, big thanks to Fancy Cuttlefish, who also sent in a super chat, and IG99C. Their question was, has it went its brightest in Eastern Kentucky yet? And of course, I don't know what time that was sent, so I'm not sure. But where I'm sitting now, the moonlight is peeking over the shadow of the Earth on the top of the moon, the same as it was before it entered shadow. So that's a little strange to me. So I guess unless my position isn't adequate to get the absolute totality of the lunar eclipse, maybe there's something fishy going on here because maybe let me try and get my droid cam thing going. Let's see if I can get it going again, and I'll share my screen. I know the video quality wasn't all that great, but yeah, it's better than nothing. So let's see, droid cam. Let me launch it, and I think I have to put in the port information into the software. Droid cam client. Bear with me here. 007 4747. Yep, so let's start it. Bear with me here, folks. Connect failed. Oh, that's no good. Maybe if I turn the Wi-Fi on my phone, that would help. There we go. All right. So what I shall do is maximize this. Oh, there comes all my Skypes because I turned my Wi-Fi on. Sorry. Let's see. Okay. So going back over to here, let me hide my stream URL from the trolls and share my screen. And did that work? Let's see. I guess I better go. Sorry, you guys, I'm fumbling through this whole thing here. Anyway, what I'm trying to do is get an image of the moon streamed so that we can talk about what I'm viewing. But you're going to have to bear with me because I suck at this. All right, here we go. I just want to make sure that the audio is coming through okay. The video looks like it's coming through okay, so no, it is not. So it actually, oh, there it is. Okay. Wow. Well, they sure make you work for it, I'll tell you. They make you work for avoiding the trolls. So here we go. Sharing my screen, presenting to everyone. And I'm going to pop outside, and hopefully my audio doesn't crap out too badly when I go and shut the door, because it sounds good. And again, welcome to everyone else that's just joining us. And let's see if we can get just a generic ass visual on the blood moon eclipse, because I don't know if you can see what I'm saying, but we're getting the moon here. Where's the moon? Where, oh, where is the moon? Well, I don't guess you guys can see this. Huh, well, doesn't that suck? Well, let me cancel out a droid cam, and I'll have to launch it again. Sorry, guys, I really was trying here. Bah. Okay, so you'll just have to bear with me yet again. So I'm gonna hide, kill this, stop this. Let's launch droid cam again from the phone. Oh, I guess I probably don't want to be showing everybody that, but hey, who gives a damn? Okay. So it looks like that is working. Let's maximize this. Make it big so y'all can see it. There's my door. That's not the moon, but here we go. Okay, so basically the moon is just barely partially lit. Wow, and that is just not showing up at all. Maybe it was working this whole time. And not getting any video. Maybe it's just not displaying on my end. So, okay, hopefully y'all can see that, but the portion of the moon that is lit is more or less the same portion of the moon that was lit just before the totality took over. And I'm not sure how that works. I thought it would slide from one side to the other, right? But maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, the moon is just a tinge of red, maybe a pinkish, but it isn't any sort of brilliant bright red as you might expect or as we've seen in some of the other footages. And again, with the naked eye and with this crappy camera, it's not like we can expect a whole lot. But just thought that was kind of interesting, because I would have expected the lit side of the moon to be coming, after the totality passed over it, to be coming from the opposite side of the moon, as, or from the same side of the moon as the totality began to encroach upon it. So, like, the shadow started encroaching on the moon from the bottom up. And so the last portion of the moon that was lit prior to getting within the totality was like the top of it. Well, now that the thing is past totality, the top of it is lit yet again. Not really sure how that works in a ball Earth model, but hey, maybe I'm just missing something here. But it's not showing up on my display, but I believe it should be showing on your end. So forgive me if I'm here, but I'm filming blind. So anyway, there it is. The beautiful blood wolf supermoon, January 20th, 21st, eclipse 2019. And let me just pop in, check in on the chat box, see how you guys are doing. And again, this stream is not going to be as long as the other one. It has been a bit of a long day for me. I don't know about you guys, but I am going to hang tight for a little while longer. Check in on the chat here. You can see it. Great. So thanks, Neverball. You guys are very helpful there in the chat. No video. Okay. Yeah, well, we were really lucky here, Lucy, in the sky. You said that it was cloudy where you're at. It was actually very clear and crisp and low humidity today, and cold as well. So that definitely helps with the visibility. Lucy in the sky says that Neverball flat Earth. Some look gray, some look orange. The shape and marks are all the same, but different colors and different sizes make me call BS. Well, I caught the tail end of that conversation, so I don't understand the context. But hey, shouting it out nonetheless. Super soy this. Okay, cool. So, yeah, this was definitely a treat. I was in Florida for the lunar eclipse last year in August, and I suppose I can stop sharing. I was in the Florida in Florida for the August 20 was it August 2017? No, August 2018 solar eclipse, and here I am in Florida for the January 2019 lunar eclipse. And this was a real treat. It wasn't as spectacular of a light show as I may have expected. You know, with a name like Blood Moon, I guess you're expecting dazzling colors and light shows and such. Um, and I guess really quickly, I just want to give a big thanks and shout out to the supporters of this show. It was Maria and Chris that made it possible, and they were contributing directly through PayPal that enabled me to avoid having to get up and go to the temp agency to try and get some work tomorrow. Usually I earn $60 a day through there, and between the two of them, they sent me $60 in order to fund this live stream. So there you go, capitalism at its finest. Also, I wanted to give a big thanks to Evan Boymel. I was not able to thank him during the last live stream for the super chat for almost $100, which I did not notice. Just to mention this real quickly, and I hate to sound like I'm looking a gift horse in the mouth, but super chats through YouTube, Google Hangouts is not the most preferred way to receive funds, although, you know, who's going to complain about that? The reason being is that Google, YouTube takes 30% of whatever you send right off the bat, and I won't see those funds until the 21st of next month, so it'll be a full month. If you do through PayPal, basically 100% of the funds go directly to me instantly, and Patreon, you know, they pay out the first of the month immediately. So anyway, not to talk too much about that sort of thing, but as always, this channel is viewer supported, so I do sort of rely on contributions from the community to keep me going. It is not mandatory; it is optional to support the channel through you know, monetary means. And if you want to just say a prayer for us, then that's also very much accepted and wanted as well. So anyway, getting back onto it, Wayne Assalam says, "Hey John, why does a solar eclipse cast a black shadow onto the sun, but a lunar eclipse casts an orange hue?" Well, I mean, you know, according to the ball Earth theory, the moon is transiting the sun according to an observer on Earth during a solar eclipse. So you've got the moon that is supposedly blotting out the sun. And I do think it's interesting that we don't see any trace of the moon as it transits the sun. I mean, you would sort of expect to see maybe a hint of the as it transits the sun, but no, you don't see anything but blue sky and then a perfectly round obstruction coming in front of the sun. When it comes to lunar eclipses, it is allegedly the ball Earth that is transiting the sun according to an observer on the moon. So what they claim that we're seeing is the shadow of the Earth cast upon the moon. But you know, the problem that I have with this again is, first of all, the shadow from the Earth is alleged to taper off into a point, and so the moon must come into a very narrow space, or to come into a very narrow point in space to achieve a lunar eclipse. Although the way that shadows operate in reality is that you would expect to see the shadow of the Earth increase in angular size proportionally with distance from the Earth. But no, not according to the ball earth theory. We see the opposite of what you would expect in reality, which is a running theme with globe earth physics. And you see the shadow of the earth tapering off into a very small point that the moon must sort of thread that needle in order to achieve a lunar eclipse. Because otherwise, you would expect to see lunar eclipses very frequently if the shadow of the Earth was divergent from the Earth or increasing in angular size from the Earth. Conversely, during solar eclipses, this again is the one time in nature that we have physical, tangible evidence of the celestial objects on the ground. So the moon casting a shadow on the ground during a solar eclipse is the only instance in reality where celestial objects are, leave a remnant of tangible evidence behind. And in those cases, we see the shadow of the moon is usually 50 to 100 miles in diameter, sometimes more, sometimes less, sometimes much less, as little as like 2 miles in diameter. And I really would love to see an experiment where you can take a 1 foot diameter object using a single light source, causing that object to cast a shadow that is only 1 inch in diameter. Um, Frankly, there's no possible way that you can create such an experiment or such conditions in an experiment because, well, shadows do not behave like that unless you're talking about the hypothetical la la land of globe earth theory. In that case, then, shadows must taper off into a point with distance. And, that's just absolute typical globe earth ill logic that you must adhere to continue believing that the earth is a sphere. Um, but back to the other point, the moon indeed transited this penumbra area right at about solar midnight, according to my position. Okay, so we're talking about 12 hours after solar noon. And so that actually fits kind of nicely with the globe Earth theory. Although, just sort of changing it up to solar eclipses again, there's only one place that the moon can be in order to achieve a solar eclipse in this model, which is, of course, directly in line with the sun and the earth. So that puts it right here. And let me just draw a little circle so that I'm not fumbling around with the mouse so much. And that way y'all can see it. But there's only one place that the moon can be. And that is, of course, right about here. Okay, and of course, that's not to scale. Maybe I'll make it a little smaller. Right? But the moon has to be right here in order to achieve a solar eclipse. And that means that the shadow of the moon could only possibly be right here. And that would necessarily be at solar noon. Okay. Now we see solar eclipses that the totality is achieved at 11 a.m. or 2 in the afternoon. And that shadow is not strictly bound to whatever longitude line is experiencing high noon. So these facts around solar eclipses completely disagree with and debunk the globe Earth theory. Similarly, on this, you could actually, because right now, let's say we're looking at a top-down view of the solar system, looking perpendicular to the ecliptic plane. You could actually flip this 90 degrees so that you're looking, so that you're sitting in the ecliptic plane and looking parallel to the ecliptic plane. So let's say this line right here represents the ecliptic plane in the ball Earth theory. And what you'll find is that solar eclipses, according to their very own model, could only occur for latitude lines that are within the tropics. Okay, because allegedly the Earth tilts at 23.4 degrees, which means that at its maximum, the shadow of the moon should only be striking the Earth somewhere in between the tropics. Maybe a couple of degrees north or south of the tropics, so north of Cancer or south of Capricorn. But frankly, we see solar eclipse signatures that transit the poles, either or pole, in different eclipses, and that's categorically impossible in the ball Earth theory. So the fact that the moon's shadow cast upon the Earth during solar eclipses is not strictly at high noon or solar noon debunks the ball Earth theory. And similarly, the fact that the moon's shadow is not strictly bound to the tropical areas and has been recorded transiting the poles, also debunks the ball Earth theory. Okay, now moving back over to these to the lunar eclipse, if the Earth's shadow were casting a wide net, as shadows tend to do, you would expect to see the moon transiting the Earth's shadow in this model very frequently, because it wouldn't have to be dead on balls in this pinpointer area of the Earth's shadow, allegedly. It could be, using this thing again, the moon has to be here, right directly here, in order to achieve a lunar eclipse. Although, if it's north of the ecliptic plane or south of the ecliptic plane, you're not going to get that total solar eclipse. And, again, this is all just very convenient, nonsensical argument for the globe that they claim that shadows cast by a single source, the sun, and cast by a single obstruction, the earth, is somehow creating this pinpointer, peculiar, stylus-like pointer of a shadow. And, again, that's just not what we see in reality. So eclipses, which are often hailed as exclusive proof of a spinning ball Earth, actually debunk the theory of a spinning ball Earth. So, just typical stuff. Black Sector Classic Lies says, I respect Jaren's hustle. Not sure if he believes in hell, but when he dies, he will run into some bad dudes. I don't know. So you're saying Jaren's going to hell? I don't know. I was always taught that we were not supposed to judge others, and frankly, I'm pretty sure I'm going to hell, and I at least try to be decent, and Jaren's a decent person, and I'm not sure why anybody would say that, but anywho, Naeem says, Morgal, why is SpaceX landing a reusable vertical rocket unmanned on Earth a big deal when they allegedly did it with people in Apollo on another planet? Did they? I mean, I guess they kind of did. Was that landing, the LEM, the lunar module, was that claimed to be a reusable vertical rocket? Or was that just sort of a LEM that was, they never even successfully landed it on Earth? So let's see if we can get a video of that, because that's pretty interesting. I believe it was Neil Armstrong or maybe Buzz Aldrin one that crash test landing of LEM on Earth. This is really funny. Yeah, Neil Armstrong. So here we go. Let's see if we can get this video without getting a copyright strike. And I am going to claim fair use. We are commenting on this for satirical purpose as well as educational and scientific discussion. So we don't need all this. But watch this thing drop like a ton of bricks. So here goes old Neil Armstrong trying to land the LEM, which I wouldn't necessarily call this a vertical reusable rocket. But watch him trying to land this thing on Earth conditions where, again, he's a ace pilot, experienced pilot, and if I'm not mistaken, they were never able to successfully land this thing on the Earth. Yet the first time they ever tried it on the moon, where nobody's ever practiced flying the thing on the moon, and there would be added pressure because you're 250,000 miles away from the nearest molecule of oxygen, allegedly. They nail it on the first try without any sort of reservations about it. And in fact, they were so sure that they would land this ridiculous Gennaro-ass thing on its first try on the moon that they filmed it live and broadcast it live all over the world. Yeah, I'm sorry, they would never do that. So let's see if old Neil is able to land this thing. I mean, this is scary, but it almost behaves like a UFO. So here, whoa, there he goes. There goes Neil. That wasn't the only one either. There was actually a much, I think, a much better one, but wow. So yeah, they landed that first try in the blind, broadcast it live to the world on the moon. Yeah, sure they did. Sure they did, NASA. We believe you. Not really. So maybe this is the same one, different one. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Right here. So is that the same one? I could have sworn I've seen a different one of these, but okay. Go ahead, Neil Armstrong, land that thing. So, but really though, like, if you had never been to, ever tried to land this thing on the moon, would you actually televise the world like on your first try? That just doesn't seem right. I mean, something seems wrong with that. Oh, there he goes. Wow. Nicely. I bet that was fun. Like, well, maybe not so much fun. I bet it was exhilarating. Yeah. Complete flop. So there's your limb. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty amazing what SpaceX does. They've tricked people into thinking that they can actually land a rocket backwards. I mean, physically, that seems like trying to balance a pencil on its head. And I just don't see what the benefit of that is other than reusing the rocket. But, the big expense on that is the fuel that they waste, right? I mean, I guess they spend a lot on research and development for the rockets and such, but it's just a big scam, people. Space doesn't exist, couldn't possibly exist. The Earth isn't in motion, it's not a sphere. There's so much evidence to show this, yet we're up against a world full of people who have been convinced since childhood into believing the ridiculous and absurd lie that the Earth is a spinning ball. And when you look at footage like that from the dog cam, which is just a really excellent shot for a number of reasons, um, I think this here speaks volumes. You've got the reflected hotspot under the sun, which to me is just really conclusive, undeniable proof that the sun is local, it's close by, it's certainly not millions and millions of miles away. And so, again, so much evidence for the flat Earth, so much evidence for the motionless, fixed, and immovable planar Earth. Yet we're called fools because we believe the Earth is flat and motionless, and we don't believe the Earth is a spinning sphere. I'm sorry, but everybody that's a flat earther, or at least 99.9% of everyone that's a flat earther, was raised on planet Earth. We were all force fed the garbage involved with the globe Earth theory. We were force fed gravity and all the rest of it. And, we decided at some point, for whatever reason, to skeptically revisit all of these assumptions that we were led to believe as children. And in doing so, we have come to the startling, almost just unbelievable conclusion that indeed the earth is flat and motionless, just as it seems to be. And, once you see this truth, you can't unsee it. You can't unsee all the trickery that goes into things like fisheye lenses and NASA and all of the pseudoscience that goes into the explanation of solar eclipses and lunar eclipses. And you can't unsee the fact that globe Earth proponents take arguments that can sort of go either way. They can either go flat or, support a sphere Earth, and they claim those arguments exclusively for the sphere. And if you try to argue with them and show them that that same argument can work on a flat Earth, they just ignore you and call you names. I think a big example of this is the Eratosthenes experiment. So I'll just pull up a visual so I can show you what I mean, because this actually ties in very well to the eclipse phenomenon. So let's get a preview of this. It relies on the notion that the sun's rays are coming in parallel to one another, striking the curved Earth. It assumes that the sun is practically infinitely distant and the light rays are all parallel. Thus, it is the Earth necessarily curving under the sun. Although, if you assume a flat Earth with a relatively local sun, the same data, the same elevation angle data of the sun can be interpolated in a flat Earth matrix, and you get wildly different results in terms of triangulating on the sun. However, both of these answers or both of these solutions are mathematically correct. So, in other words, the Eratosthenes value or the data gleaned by Eratosthenes' experiment can work in either model. It is not exclusive to either, and this is this is a big problem for the eclipse, umbra, and penumbra situation, because again, in order for Eratosthenes' experiment values to work, the sun's rays must be coming in at the point where they hit the Earth at practically parallel to one another. However, when you switch over to this diagram, uh, in order to get the umbra and penumbra phenomenon, the sun's rays must necessarily be coming in at a convergent and then divergent angle from one another, which is completely the opposite of parallel, right? So the idea that Eratosthenes' method or Eratosthenes' value somehow proves the spinning ball Earth is ridiculous, because it frankly it disagrees with this the main premise of Eratosthenes' assumption that the sun's rays are coming in parallel to one another. So, again, this is typical globe Earth shenanigans, trying to have their cake and eat it too. Saying that the sun's rays are parallel to one another when it suits their argument, and saying that the sun's rays are convergent from one another when it suits their argument. And I don't see how you can reconcile this. Greater Sapien tried to reconcile it by saying that these lines are practically parallel, which means they are divergent, right? Because practically parallel will eventually converge. But that's not what this is saying. If you had these lines divergent from one another at the point that they're hitting the Earth, then this experiment would fall apart, and the values gleaned from the spherical trigonometry would be null and void, because they have to be coming in, the sun rays have to be coming in parallel to one another. And, this just flies in the face with the whole umbra and penumbra thing, which is another necessity for the globe Earth. So, just typical globe Earth nonsense. Um, anyway, and I've touched on that stuff before, but it never ceases to amaze me how globe Earthers can be so very meticulously scientific when it comes to certain things, and completely ignore and abandon those scientific values when it comes to other things. Same thing goes with the Coriolis effect. I could list off examples, but wow. I mean, it just does not cease to amaze me, the ignorance and arrogance when it comes to Team Globetard, right? So let's check in on the live stream, see how you guys are doing. 50 watching. And I guess before we wrap this up, because it is 1:15 a.m. where I'm sitting, let me go take another look at the moon and see if that lit spot has grown any. Wow, and I almost can't see it. Yeah, so that's so weird. Let me diagram this out for you guys, because I don't see how this works on the ball. Like, I don't get it at all. So let me do a diagram, and I'll share my screen so as I can show you. Or am I still sharing? Oh, I wasn't sharing my screen that whole time, was I? I was like showing you guys things and not sharing my screen. So let me try that again. Sorry, y'all. Okay, present to everyone. Let me make sure that it shows up. And what I was showing you, although you guys weren't able to see it, was Eratosthenes' method. On a sphere, they're assuming that the light rays are coming in parallel to one another. Here's your flat Earth matrix, where you've got a local sun and convergent sun rays. However, when you've got this penumbra and umbra phenomenon, that relies on the sun's rays not being parallel. It's right in their very diagram. And so which is it? Are the sun's rays coming in parallel to one another in order to make Eratosthenes' method work? Or are they coming in convergent or divergent from one another in order to make the umbra penumbra phenomenon work, right? I mean, which is it, Globers? Okay, so this is what I was just talking about. I don't understand how this works. Maybe someone can, bring this up later. Maybe it's food for thought. It's definitely worth a discussion, I think. But okay, as the eclipse started, and let me go see what the rabbit in the moon is doing before I go on, because I would like to know how much that bugger has rotated. Where'd you go, moon? Okay. It's hard to tell because it's still shaded, but okay, let me do this diagram for you guys so you can see what I'm saying. Like, I do not get this at all. Okay, so as the eclipse started, okay, whoops. As the eclipse started, the shadow of whatever the shadow is, started coming up in this direction, okay? So this is what the eclipse was doing. The shadow was coming up this way, And the last thing that we saw looked about like that. It was a sliver on the top of the moon. Well, now that the eclipse is over, the shadow is going back down this way. Like, what in the crap? How does that work? I promise you, I'm not making this up. So the moon, like, how does that work in this model? Like, let's put this over here on the ball Earth. So what they're saying is that the moon did basically this number, and it gets in the shadow. And then the only other way I can see that working is if it comes back this way. Like, really? Like, am I looking at this wrong? Tell me I'm crazy. Like, I have to be crazy and I'm looking at this wrong. But again, the shadow of whatever comes up the moon and does one of these numbers, and then comes here, and then it goes back down this way. Like, how does that work on the ball? I don't get it. Am I tripping here, or did you guys see the same thing too? Let's go over to the chat and see if I'm tripping. Like, you guys tell me. Does that make sense? Like, how does that even make sense on ball Earth? Like, because at least as flat earthers, we can say, well, we don't even know what the moon is. And, we don't have to know what the moon is. And frankly, it holds no bearing on this argument at all, because measurably, the Earth doesn't have curvature and is not in motion, right? So we don't have to look at the moon and prove what the moon is and prove how all this works, because we have things like the world record long distance landscape photography by beyondhorizons.eu, which looks something like this. 273 miles away, you can see the mountain range in the distance, which should not be possible on the ball. If you do the spherical trigonometry, assuming the globe Earth with a radius of about 4,000 miles, the tip top of the tallest peak should be over a half a mile below the horizon line. So let's see if we can get the diagram here. Here we go. Preview that as well. Whoops. Preview that as well. So here's the trigonometry. If you're observing from here, your horizon would be here. The tip top of that tallest peak from 273 miles away would be over a half a mile below your horizon. And yet here we are. We can clearly see the entire mountain range. That should not be possible on the ball from 273 miles away. So when we see things like that, we don't have to, prove what the moon is or prove what's going on during an eclipse. However, globe earthers certainly do, because they claim that they know everything. So what exactly is that? How is this possible? What are we looking at here when the shadow during a lunar eclipse starts down here, works its way up here, and then moves back down this way? Like, what the crap? I had never noticed that before. Like, that is really interesting. And my next question would be, do lunar eclipses behave like that every time? Or, because, like, wouldn't you what you would expect to see, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but what you would expect to see is you would expect to see the shadow do one of these numbers. You'd expect it to go like this, and then this way, and then that way, right? You do not expect the shadow to go, and let me stretch this out a little bit, it's just annoying me. You do not expect the shadow to do like this and then come back down. So what, did the moon just change directions? Well, clearly the moon did not change directions. Um, but oh my goodness, like, wow. Do you guys see what a problem that is for the ball? And I'm sure that they've got some sort of an explanation for this. So, okay, Jakuber Kersurmaka says says this. So let's see let's see the wiki article that he just linked us to. Okay, so that didn't have anything to do with that, but he says, while mirages are the best known atmospheric refraction phenomenon, looming and similar refraction phenomenon do not produce mirages. Mirages show an extra image or images of the miraged object, while looming, towering, stooping, and sinking do not. No inverted image is present in those phenomenon either. Depending on atmospheric conditions, the objects can appear to be elevated or lowered, stretched, or stooped. Okay, so anyway, wow, I mean, I, I cannot be the only one that's noticed this, and certainly this either happens all the time during lunar eclipses or it does never happen. Like, which is it? Is this a common thing and nobody ever really noticed that this is a big problem for the ball, or is this something that just never happens? Yeah, exiting. So Chrissy Shunda says exiting to the right. Yeah, I don't get it. Anybody else get this? Let's see. Mary Vey says, here the shadow went down, but more to the north, right in Belgium. Okay. Zan3119 says, I'm not a flat earther, guys, but I love you guys for your open minds. You get crap done, boots on the ground, chartering planes, buying boats and cameras. The photography is hard to rectify. Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And you're not a flat earther, but I would say you are not a flat earther yet, because at least you're looking into the topic. It's certainly nothing that you will just be convinced of overnight. You've been conditioned for probably decades since you were a impressionable little toddler into the belief of a spinning ball Earth, and so it's nothing that just happens overnight. It took me about a week of very rigorous and in-depth study and soul searching and reflection to come to the conclusion that the Earth couldn't be a spinning ball. So what is left? Black Sector Classic Lies says, what burden of proof would you require to believe the Earth to be spherical, and was the same burden of proof required to convince you of a flat Earth? Well, I will say that I thought and believed wholeheartedly for the first 30 plus years of my life that the Earth was a spinning ball in outer space. On the other hand, when confronted with flat Earth, my first knee-jerk reaction was I thought it was the stupidest thing I'd ever heard of, and I couldn't believe there were actually crazy people out there who thought the Earth was flat. And then at some point, I looked into the topic. And once I looked into the topic, there were some points made that piqued my interest. And at some point, I looked into it myself and researched this topic myself. And really, it wasn't just one thing. There were probably 3 dozen things, my own personal checklist of items that I had to go through in order to completely come to the realization that the Earth is not a spinning ball. One of them was the airline flights conundrum, where an eastbound flight often is identical in duration to its westbound flight. That is not possible on a ball that is spinning 1,000 miles an hour to the east. Another thing is the fact that Polaris remains central to all the other stars for all of recorded history, and at least for my entire lifetime. When you look into things like precession of the equinoxes, they say that the Earth is precessing or wobbling on its axis once every 26,000 years. Well, that equates to about 1 degree every 72 years of precession. And simply put, the North Pole star is allegedly aligned to that axis. And if that thing is precessing 1 degree every 72 years, well, that's a half a degree in 36 years, quarter of a degree in 18 years. So over the course of my life, we should have seen a half a degree of precession, throwing Polaris out of whack with the central position of all the other stars. So that fact alone completely debunks the heliocentric theory, and it proves that precession of the equinoxes is not caused by axial precession. It is caused by something else. There are just so many points. I mean, the Earth is definitely measurably stationary beneath our feet. It's not spinning. It's not orbiting in multiple directions at once. The Earth is definitely measurably not curved, especially over standing water, especially over many, many miles. There is no curvature. And so if the Earth doesn't have curvature and it's not spinning or moving, then it could not be a spinning ball by very simple definition. Um, yeah, so Max Bojan DBB asks, what are my thoughts on Rahu and Ketu and on the moon being red? I actually mentioned a little bit of that in the previous stream. Her eyes, but I think Rahu and Ketu is an interesting theory, and I think that Vedic astronomy is definitely worth looking into. Although it does sort of jump off the deep end a bit for me at some points. I think that the ancient Vedics were probably onto something when it came to their cosmology, and I think that we have a lot to learn from such ancient cultures. Her eyes on level says, the Morgile, did you notice the stars were dim when the moon was eclipsed, and now that it's half lit, the stars are all bright? Yeah, I did notice that. I noticed that the stars seemed to get a little bit brighter while the thing was halfway eclipsed. And then when it got eclipsed, I hardly noticed any stars. So that's a good observation. I did sort of subconsciously notice that. And now that you mentioned it, yeah, indeed, that is true, or so it would appear. Black Sector Classic Lies says, I honestly admit that I do not know and claim ignorance until further research since I have been lied to by both sides. Yeah, yeah, indeed. That's a very, very good way to look at the world, skeptically, zetetically, and with an open mind. You know, you have to be skeptical and open-minded at the same time, as it seems. So Zan3119 says, by the way, your Brett Kavanaugh your our video was scary as hell and was a red pill moment for me. I think it was a psyop, but it shows the evil in the extreme in which the powers that be go to. Yeah, totally crazy. The Kavanaugh, Blasey Ford, Finkel and Einhorn fiasco. I'll tell you, those two people, Kavanaugh and Blasey Ford, the now Supreme Court Justice and his Me Too movement rapist accuser or sexually assault accuser, Blasey Ford, well, they appear to be the same person, or at least have identical faces, hands, noses, and dimples on their chin, right? So there is definitely something there, and I'm just going to throw my hands up and say I believe that they're the same person, based on a fairly intense look into their faces. Um, their eyes, their ears, their noses, their mouths, the dimples on their chin, their hands, everything about them appears to be the same person. So I'm glad that you liked it, and I could do videos about those two all day long. I mean, it really was just one of the craziest things I've ever seen. And yeah, I know the Earth is flat, so what does that tell you? Okay, the Kavanaugh video, yeah, I'll put a link up. Oh my goodness, if you guys haven't seen that, you have got to see this. Let me link it up. I'll put a link up right here. So let me go to my channel. I've actually done two on the topic. And I think the second one was better. So I'll just link up the second one. Where are you? Finkel and Einhorn. Finkel and Einhorn. Where are they? Slow internet. Okay. So let's go find Finkel and Einhorn. Here we go. So this is the one. This is the second one I did. I think it was a little bit better, more in depth than the first one. So let's copy that link. I'll drop it here in the chat for you guys. There goes the Finkel and Einhorn vid. Yeah, there you go. So definitely have a look at that. It is a jaw dropper. I mean, it is absolutely uncanny. Uh, Kavanaugh and his Me Too accuser, Christine Blasey Ford, certainly have identical faces, noses, ears, hands, eyes, chins, and dimples. And I'm going to submit that I believe it was the same person. And what is the motive for that? I think that the big first motive is for Kavanaugh to show his allegiance to the shadow government. He's showing his allegiance to the powers which ought not be. And at the same time, there may be some tactical, subliminal, predictive programming method involved here, where I don't know. I don't purport to understand how that sort of thing works, but they do have it down to a science. So Zan3119 says, yes, Morgile, you're right, brother. Finkel and Einhorn. Yeah, thank you, man. I'm glad you like that. No video found, really. Huh. Well, that ain't good. Let me try that again. Maybe. Oh, I bet you I know why. It was trying to take you to my take you to the a video editing thing. So hold on. Let's try that again. See if this works. Finkel and Einhorn. There you go. So there it is. That's the one that should work. And I'll pop it in there a couple of times, because I know it takes about 30 seconds for my voice to catch up with the chat. So there's that. And I'll do it again here. There, that should work. So, okay, between the Glowbuster show, we did over 4 hours and 15 minutes earlier, starting at 3 Eastern. noon Pacific. If you guys missed the Globebuster show today, definitely go and check that out. And between this one here and the last one, I did live stream starting at about 10:30 to 1:30. So, man, I've done a full day's work in live streaming. And yes, I do have an email. Here's my email right here. It's themorguile@gmail.com. There you go. And by the way, if I haven't mentioned it, which I know that I have, this channel, I do rely on community support to keep the channel going. I don't really earn much money through YouTube, as contrary to popular belief. So if you'd like to help out and help me continue making videos and focus my time on research and flat Earth and videos, as opposed to getting up at 4:30 in the morning and going off to the temp agency, possibly for nothing, at best for minimum wage, for working my butt off like an Israeli slave, feel free to send one-time contributions to PayPal through www.paypal.me/themorguile, or through Patreon to www.patreon.com/themorguile. And I'll go ahead and put some links in the chat as well as in the description. So I just want to thank everyone for joining. No, I don't speak Greek. I do remember a couple of things that my papu and yaya taught me when I was young, and I have forgotten more than I learned, but I do know how to say thank you, efkaristo, and please, tipotis, and yeah, I can say some cuss words, but I'm not going to do that on here because I'm above that, right? So anyway, here we go. So here's paypal.me/themorguile if you'd like to send a one-time contribution, and www.patreon.com/themorguile for a recurring monthly contribution for as little as $1 per month. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and end this one, but I'll tell you, it's been a blessing hanging out with you guys. Thanks so much for joining. I really love you guys and appreciate everything that you do. All the kind words and thumbs ups. Don't forget to thumb up the video and subscribe if you enjoyed it. And, even the trolls that keep me on my toes. Zan3119 says, but if you notice, they've got a lot of hardcore truthers totally distracted with the Q movement psyop. Yeah, QAnon to me is just a bunch of bogus malarkey, but yeah, Neverball. I learned Flat Earth and Greek. I would like to learn another language, and I think Greek is a beautiful language, although I think that Spanish is probably more practical this day and age. So anyway, yeah, I'm going to wrap this up, guys. Love you. God bless you. And as always, spread the word, spread the world, and peace out, everybody. Take it easy.